On to the next question, and Mr. Steele, you'll get to start. Arkansas's increasingly overcrowded correction system continues to cause inmates bound for prison to back up in the state's county jails, stretching the budgets of local governments. As Attorney General, what efforts can you undertake to relieve the overcrowding and improve conditions at county jails while still protecting the state's law-abiding citizens?
Thank you for the question, and as you note from my opening, this is really one of the primary focuses that I think the Attorney General needs to really aim all their resources towards. We just went into special session last week to alleviate some of these problems. You know, I think I have a record in the legislature of standing up for both parties on this particular issue. When we passed Act 570, which was aimed at limiting the prison overcrowding issue, my argument was that it wouldn't do that. It would actually only cost the counties more money and overcrowd county jails rather than prisons. Unfortunately, that's exactly what's happened. So this is a top priority. It's led to us paroling out people we do not need to be paroling out. I think we need to start by expanding drug courts. Drug courts are extraordinarily successful where we have them. We don't have enough of them, and they're not in the right places. So we need to start with expanding drug courts and focusing on issues like mental health. I can tell you as a former prosecutor, the fact that prosecutors handle mental commitments and mental health issues is not probably the best way to handle that, because when you're a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So if we focus on drug courts, mental health, and alternative sentencing, we can make sure that we have a room for sexual predators and other violent criminals, and we do not parole those out. I want to see truth in sentencing on those kinds of offenses. I want to see them serve their entire term in prison. Because as a prosecutor, the worst thing you can do is have to go to a family after a jury verdict or a judge verdict is handed down and tell them, let me tell you what that really means. They'll be out in a sixth of the time or less. So we've got to focus on that, make room for those folks, and do a better job of keeping our county jails with room to keep them there. Thank you.
Ms. Rutledge.
I've had a number of conversations with county judges and sheriffs across the state about this issue of overcrowding. We do need to look at more drug courts and alternative sentencing. I agree with Nate on that, and we've been talking about that for over a year. My father actually helped start a drug court in Independence County in the 16th Judicial District when he was circuit judge. And whether it's post-adjudication or pre-adjudication drug courts, we've got to start changing lives. And certainly the Act 570, we need a total overhaul of Act 570. So that way we can have folks that are in prison that need to be in prison, and other people who can have the opportunity to change lives and go be productive citizens in society. That's where they need to be. We need to start putting people in programs so that way they can be productive citizens of society. And that's what a drug court can do if you have the right judge and the right probation and parole officers. We need folks that are our criminal justice system, the Attorney General working with the Department of Community Corrections and the Department of Corrections, as well as the Governor's Office, to help steer that. As the Chief Legal Officer of the state, we're also seen as a quasi-chief law enforcement officer. And so I believe it's imperative the Attorney General to use our experience, to use my experience, being a prosecutor, advising Governor Huckabee, to use that experience to coalesce all of our law enforcement, our mental health treatment, our drug courts into one, so that way we start saving and changing lives and keeping the bad guys in prison.
Mr. Cash.
First of all, the AG is not a lawmaker, and the office has nothing to do with sentencing. So I have to answer this question from a personal standpoint. I do agree with lessening sentences for nonviolent offenders. I'm in favor of legalizing marijuana. A lot of people in prison for marijuana, they're nonviolent. They shouldn't even be in prison, and that would solve the problem with overcrowding. So, but that has nothing to do with the AG's office. That's just from my personal viewpoint.
Mr. Steele, 30 seconds.
Well, we have to recognize that these drug offenses are at the core of our criminal justice problems in this state. Every time as a prosecutor that we have a violent criminal, and you pull the criminal history, 9 times out of 10 there's a felony drug arrest in the past. A lot of this, like I said, we've done a good job of shutting down meth labs, but now we've got it coming in from out of state. So as Attorney General, I intend to work with our federal law enforcement agencies, our DEA, our Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and others to combat drugs in general and their entrance into the state. If we can do that, it'll make a big difference, and it's a big difference between that and fighting the federal government. I think we need to work with the federal law enforcement agencies.
Thank you. And Ms. Rutledge.
Well, I am opposed to any legalization of marijuana. My apologies, Mr. Cash. On that, at my time as a prosecutor, my time working for the Department of Human Services, I saw where marijuana was merely a a gateway drug, and too many children's lives were affected by it. To address the original question of jail overcrowding in our counties, we need to get the bad guys in pen. We need to have the state come pick up those folks from our counties, because that's the biggest problem, is that you have state prisoners sitting in county jails, and so they need to be moved to the state prisons.
Thank you. Mr. Captain.
If we could stop focusing on nonviolent drug offenders and focus really on violent offenders who deserve to be in prison, the resources could be shifted and also be cheaper than enforcing all the marijuana laws. Millions of people use marijuana every year, and it's less harmful than alcohol, but I don't hear of anyone calling for alcohol to be banned.
All right.